Get ready to be inspired by the great things happening in rural education. The Rural Scoop will bring you new ideas and innovative solutions. We'll dive into education issues and we'll highlight what's working in your rural communities. You'll hear from a variety of educators, administrators, professionals, and others who will provide relevant and engaging content in each episode. And now, serving up the scoop, here's your host, Dr. Melissa Sadorf.
Welcome back to the Rural Scoop. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Sadorf, and today I'm joined by Shelly Munoz, STEM Curriculum Coordinator for the Brainerd Public School System in Minnesota. Shelly's role centers on building coherent STEM experiences across grades, strengthening community partnerships, and aligning classroom projects with real pathways into local work and further study. Her team has focused on practical, place-based projects, family engagement that actually brings parents into the building, and clearer maps for middle school curiosity and then on to high school courses and internships. So today we're going to be talking about what it looks like day to day, the planning, the partnership, the metrics that matter, and how rural systems can grow this work without new layers of jargon or budget bloat. So Shelly, thank you for making time to be here with me today.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate this opportunity.
Well, I want to start with why STEM and why Brainerd. So when you stepped into the STEM coordinator position at Brainerd, what was the issues at hand that you really were put on the team to solve? And how did you define success that first 90 days or that first semester of your time there at Brainerd?
Yeah, I think when we're just really focusing in on a rural STEM program, one of the biggest concerns I had and what I was really passionate about was the equity piece of it. We can go to the cities in Minneapolis or I'm from California too, so I may bring some of that in our conversation. But in a city-centric kind of location, it's much easier to make those kind of connections we're talking about. But I have to be honest, when I moved to central Minnesota and where I'm like smack dab in the middle of Minnesota, very rural area, all I saw was STEM. But I think that other people weren't able to see that all of this stuff that was so amazing in our area was really connected to STEM. So really my passion for that was trying to create the same kind of equity for all students, because I think that's really important, or letting students have the opportunity to see themselves in those roles. I would go back to myself. I never saw myself in that role because there was never an opportunity or someone never said, hey, you might be a really good blah, blah, blah. It was just something that I didn't know. So it's creating those pathways for the students. I think about the first 90 days when I was able to get this position is that really defining what STEM is. There's a lot of misconception as to what STEM is. I think that there's a plethora of programs out there, but really, in my opinion, STEM is connecting the science, the technology, the engineering, and the mathematics in a really coherent way that makes all access seem very apparent. And so when students are sitting in a science classroom, they're able to see the mathematics that's part of maybe data collection or an experiment that they're doing. When they're in their mathematics class, maybe they can see some engineering that they can bring in there. But the beauty of STEM is just really that connection of all of those modalities. And that was really my biggest goal, is really creating a strong definition as to what STEM is and being able to connect all of those in a very meaningful way that really was fluid so that the students could start to see that it is all connected. It's not, oh, why are we doing math because we're in a science classroom or because they're all connected.
Right. Can you name a moment early on where, whether it was a meeting or a classroom visit or even a community conversation that told you that the district was ready to move to a systems thinking? It sounds like there hadn't been a system in place for STEM. And what was it that you saw, and what decision points did that trigger for you?
Yes. Well, I think we all come to the table with gifts, and my gift is definitely systems thinking, being able to take all of the different pieces and show how they fit together and pull them together. Early on, I was really, really fortunate to get to do when we talk about all the things we're talking about, a really beautiful project that I was really able to articulate through proof in what it was I was talking about. So in central Minnesota, we have government co-ops. And I did, before this role, work for Sourcewell. And then, of course, my role in the public school. And then we had the Minnesota STEM ecosystem. So I was able to work on a collaborative effort with those three to create something that I was so proud, but it brought in so many different people. And with that, the students were able to, so in the science aspect, because in Brainerd, Minnesota, we fished. And we fish a lot. Fishing is a very big thing here. And so in the science aspect of it, we were able to learn about the anatomy and physiology of fish. And the math aspect of it, we were able to learn how maybe a fish uses those swim bladders for buoyancy, etc. But then in the engineering part, the kids were able to design and 3D print their own fishing lure. Ooh. And then from there, and so, engineering trial and error and so forth. But really the icing on the cake was the community piece of it, where we had a number of fishing tour guides, that's their profession, who came in and volunteered to take the kids out to test their lures. But the really big piece of that too was the technology piece that came into that, because on these amazing boats that they have with all their technological gadgets that help them know where fish are and how deep and etc., the kids were able to look at that firsthand as well. And then the last part that I would like to say about that is that we have we're on tribal lands, we're in a tribal nation where we're located. And so we had an elder come out and bless and really was able to tell us the history of Gull Lake and that there were some ancient burial grounds there as well. So I think that was a long-winded answer, but when I think about STEM, really what I was trying to do is to showing those connections and bringing the community in, because I had no one tell me no when I asked. A week after that, the students were able to go on a podcast, local fisherman podcast, and tell about their experience. And it was really cool. And, time being what it is, we weren't able to really go through and redesign those lures, but that's really what STEM is in a rural community. It's the community having a part of it. It's taking all the resources we have, but what an amazing opportunity, because a lot of our students are going to grow up to be tour guides. So as far as in the fishing industry. So yeah, it's, the systems of that piece, it was a kind of a large system, but it fit into so many different pieces. So definitely we really lean into our community, and the community truly cares about our students. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Shelly, can you talk a little bit about your own path and how going from the classroom to where you are now doing some systems level work? What did that progression teach you about what actually moves the needle in a rural setting? There's things that look really good on paper, but they don't necessarily matriculate to a product or a project that's going to matter for kids. So talk a little bit about how you got here and what you've learned along the way.
Oh boy. Okay. So I'm going to go back to third grade, Shelly, because I think if we all do this, we see the path that our life was meant to take. So my dad was a construction worker, and he used to bring home all kinds of scrap wood, metal, etc. So third grade, Shelly would be in the backyard, and I would build clubhouses, go-karts, you name it. I love to build, design, but it never occurred to me that I might be an engineer or a scientist. So long story short, as I went through college, I just kind of I started to realize I love science classes. And I had a friend like, I think I'm going to be a science teacher. Do you want to come check this out with me? So I did. And lo and behold, I felt that was my path. And so I became a science teacher early on. Absolutely loved the class. In the science classroom, and this was before it was maybe trendy or chic, or actually we know it's best practices. So I should apologize for saying that. But I wanted my classroom to be hands-on, lab-based, really digging into, not lecture-based, because I know for myself that was always difficult, and or route memorization. So I actually started that way back at like the late 90s. And so I'm proud to think about the progression, because as with, anyone who's a science teacher with NGSS, we know what the 3 dimensions look like, and it's just good practices. And so I feel very, very, very blessed by the career that I had as a classroom teacher, because I feel that I always wanted to try to be innovative. I always wanted to bring my kids' opportunity that was outside of a textbook, so to speak. Yep. And so that began to really build some momentum, started speaking at NSTA conferences, building a little bit more momentum. Colleagues and I were able to write a book for STEM, and NSTA, if you look at NSTA STEM exemplars, there's our chapters in that book. And so really started to become more and more passionate about STEM and kind of realized that there was a big inequity in STEM too, because at the time I lived in California, we went to the East Coast and we saw these amazing vans that they would drive it, and they had big labs inside of them and so forth. So really, a colleague and I, our thing was we just wanted that for our students. And so we really began to dig, and I'm very proud of the work that we were able to do. But as everyone knows, COVID happened 2020. And it was during that time, my son actually met someone from Minnesota in college in California. And when they got married, they decided to move back to Minnesota. So it was during that time we realized what's important in life. And I decided to take a jump out into Minnesota. And it's been a really great adventure in Minnesota because I've actually learned so much too. I think that the thing about STEM is it creates lifelong learners within us too, because especially when you look at technology, AI, and all of that, you cannot keep up. It is a constant will of learning. So my first year here, I did teach chemistry at Pierce High School. And that was a wonderful experience because I was able to bring in some things that the community had not seen and or done before. And so bringing in, sometimes rural communities can be very slow in change and process. And so I think that it really takes someone who believes in you to let you bring it to the table and show how it works. And then others start to catch on. So I think really that's where we're at. One of the things at Sourcewell I learned, we use something through the Giant tools. It's a motivational kind of leadership program. And there's 5 voices. My voice is a creative connector. And so a connector is someone who brings people together, but a creative is one who thinks more in the future, like always looking ahead. So there is that delicate balance of what I bring to the table, because we need the people who are really focused in the now and getting things done and so forth. So that's been kind of the balance of what it's been in a rural school, is having vision, but having to be patient to wait for everyone to line up and understand what that vision is. And so, there's just a lot of innovation. I feel like I have to foster a lot of innovation, creativity, and problem solving.
You talk about getting everybody on board, which that's some resistance. So can you expand on that, Shelly, and talk about where did you face resistance? Was it around time? Was it around schedules? Was it around comfort with the content? And how did you convert that into teachers that were willing to be partners with you in this work? Walk us through what that looked like for you.
Yeah, that is a wonderful question, because it was step by step, kind of like walking upstairs. You have to take first steps. So I was fortunate enough to get to work with the team with science, and the new science standards took a major change. It's not content-based the way it once was. It's 3-dimensional, and walking them through and saying, okay, if we can just start here with the phenomenon, can you just try that for the next couple of months and have the kids build their notice and wonder? What if we could build a storyboard with those questions and just making it step by step, not having that huge expectation that everything would be done at once? And then, so the next time we met, here's the practices, asking questions, and how would you be willing to try this and or this? And then, of course, the cross-cutting concepts. But now in Minnesota, they're not adopted yet, but we have some great changes in our math standards, and kind of that three-dimensional aspect that we saw in science, we're now going to see in math. And so it's just having teachers be confident enough to take just one step. So I'm going to say small steps, but very intentional steps, really well-trained steps, so that the PD is really able to facilitate any questions, what they have, but showing a really clear pathway of where this knowledge needs to go. And so, That's just really creating a step-by-step strong PD, but the intentionality, and then of course where the why behind anything is always really important. And I think that once you're able to articulate that and make that light bulb go in our teachers' heads, because sometimes, well, really that's where you need to start, but then to show them the power. And I've even gone into classrooms and modeled what it looks like, and to see that moment of, oh, this is what it looks like. We do, because it puts the students in the driving seat, not the teacher. And so I think teachers spend such an incredible, oh, bless our teachers. Teachers are the most amazing people. But when you change it around like that, it's really putting the learning and the thought processes in the students' lap was what we really want. So it's just making, I just call it a big shift. It's a huge shift. And I think that we've had some great success, and I'm really, really proud of what we've been able to accomplish with that.
So, one of the things that I've heard as a rural superintendent was that hands-on learning it's just fun. And it's a little bit more than that. There is some rigor that needs to be brought into that whole equation. So can you talk a little bit about the kinds of conversations you had with your teachers around specific standards and the data that students were collecting, and maybe the iteration checkpoints that were separated from the novelty of doing something hands-on from the true learning? Talk a little bit about how you address that.
And I think when you're giving students these opportunities to be more multimodal, let's say, but like with science, there was really a focus on claim, evidence, and reasoning, really having the kids to think just slightly deeper, not that the answer is A, B, C, D, but what is the claim? Like if you're going to take an experiment, whatever it might be, or if you're going to do, maybe it's some kind of engineering design and you want to try different weights to see the balance or so forth. Like you need to make a claim before. What is your claim? What is your evidence? How are you going to support this? Because that's what we're really lacking sometimes out in the real world, let's say, is that we need a beautiful balance of, if you're making a claim, what evidence do you have? But what's your reasoning? Like I really love to hear the kids' reasoning, because they come up with things that I would have never thought about before. I'm like, that is absolutely brilliant. And with that said, that's where the math change is coming in that we learned very procedural when we learned math. It was the teacher stood at the board, and it was very procedural, and you did it their way. And if you like, division's a very popular one to talk about, 5 divided by, and we had to follow it way down exactly like the teacher told us. But really now we're trying to encourage the students to talk about, explain your reasoning. What is that? Your thought process. Is there more than one way to do it? And that makes me really excited, is there's multiple ways to solve a math problem, and giving kids the opportunity to explain their thinking. And it's brilliant. Because I think we're so procedurally bound in our thought process because we went through so many years of it. When it's a conceptual understanding and the way that they think about it, oh my goodness, I have actually learned so much from the kids. And I think too, just getting away from just one way to solve a math problem. There's like any problem, there's multiple ways to solve it. And that's really exciting that's where we're getting at with that.
So this does not happen in isolation. Typically, to run a really substantial STEM program, you have to have partners on board. So can you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It is not easy to do it from nothing. So what organizations did what? Whether it was helping with materials or expertise or access, safety. How did you approach those organizations to secure commitments without having to dip into a budget?
Yes, well, organizations are incredibly important, but I think the number one platform I want to give is our teachers. Our teachers do incredible work. I don't know if I can say teachers' names or not on the platform, but I just, the thing I so much love about a rural community is the heart that goes into it. And so Brian Bordwell at our high school runs our robotics program, and it is amazing. As a matter of fact, just a week ago, we hosted a statewide competition, and to see the different teams come in, And I mean, really, that's where it starts, because you're getting the kids excited about something like robotics. And I just amazed with the brilliance of the students. We have a unique experience as well in Brainerd, Minnesota at our middle school, is that we have a planetarium. And that planetarium really creates a lot of opportunities. It's funded by Sourcewell, but it's run by Tim Peabody. And kids get to go in and have those experiences of a planetarium. And so, but it was teachers that their voice is what started that. Again, in our area, our Forest View Middle School, we have a forest. And I'm always like, it's amazing to think we have a forest, but it was named after Dean Mackey, who is a retired DNR, but he still gives endless hours to that work. And so, and Robin Knudsen is the teacher that we work together, but at that time, she was the teacher that helped get all of that work started. And we have someone named Tom Coop, who is retired, but he is working on an aviation program at our high school at our local airport to get the kids flying lessons. And even if they don't want to be a pilot, he will take them up just to see and experience what that's like. And so I think the heart of a rural community is the community and the people and the heart. And that these things that I'm talking about with our students, our FFA program in our ag department, Magnus Nelson uses a tremendous amount of his time and effort and hours. And Project Lead the Way, that's led by Corey Olson at our Forest View Middle School. I just, so many amazing people that come to create this. So I just get the great opportunity of being able to connect all the pieces and show how they bring together. But I love that in our high school, we have a beautiful CTE program. But this year, this was our first year in our 5-8 middle school. We kind of started those pathways into our middle school. And so we're starting to add some financial literacy, computer classes, medical, and then, of course, Project Lead the Way. And then we have a variety of STEM classes there as well. So there's just so much work being done, but it is a big lift. But I think that, a lot of times, yes, funding is always going to be a challenge. And we're currently, to be honest, we're going through great challenges right now that I suspect most every other school district are at this time as well. So that's where the lift of our community, our co-op partnerships, and it just seems to really be able to get us from A to B. And really, I just look at the work that everyone's doing. I mean, it makes me very proud.
So a substantial program doesn't always start out with 100% success. So I'm sure that there were moments of, oh my goodness, that didn't quite work the way that we had intended it to.
Right.
So, it broke, it flopped, it didn't pass the test.
Right.
So
I think anyone in a STEM classroom knows that, because we all get these big ideas that of maybe we want to accomplish this. And any teacher knows a lesson that flops. It of course it happens. And I think it's just giving everyone grace, because I don't think you can get anywhere if there's not those flops or deterrents to get us from A to B. Now we're trying to get to C. So there's something to be said for those failures, because it helps make things better and gives us time to evaluate and readjust.
Absolutely. Using it as a coachable moment for your teachers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And boy, we can always, myself especially, we can all use coachable moments and grow and learn. And hindsight being what it is, I think we all could say, oh, I wish I had, or you don't even think of it at the time, but then the next time around, it just gets better and better.
Mm-hmm. If the districts that are listening right now were interested in standing up their own STEM programs at their school, and they wanted to do this, let's say, next month, what would you recommend that they think about for the first couple of weeks? What emails would they need to send, or what logistics would they need to lock in, or what kinds of curriculum would they need to start thinking about?
Right. I think the thing about STEM, and this is, I still a misconception, is that you don't have to start with a huge robotics program that takes thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. When we started our STEM program back in California, when I had told you about the colleague from the NSTA, we started very small, and we started in an elective, and we started with prototyping and starting small. And I think that that's a misconception, because I have had people tell me STEM's not STEM if you don't have all the big bells and whistles and so forth. But truly, I wrote a book called Dollar Tree STEM, where it can be just a few dollars, because really the idea of STEM is building in some of those engineering design. And can you take a piece of paper and make it hold up 10 books? Or how many books can you build something that this piece of paper could hold? And it seems impossible until you actually start to do it. So I think my advice is start small. I don't think that you need to go spend money on a curriculum. There's so many resources out there, and amazing resources out there, to start small and build. And I just have to say, there is something to when students do something that they kind of created themselves, as opposed to, and no offense against Legos, I love Legos, but when you have something telling you exactly how to put it together, I mean, there's satisfaction in that. But when the kids or students figure that out themselves, that's where the real beauty lies. And it's like, oh my goodness, I can think of my own classroom experience when you hear that, woohoo! It's just so exciting. And, the last year before I had this role, when I was in the high school, we did a prosthetic hand, and I had them first, because we had it was on loan to me from a friend, but we had them build a prosthetic hand from cardboard first, and to see some of the design that they came up with, and just the different idea. Some use string, some use wire, and all of the different ways to make their hand move. But in the classroom, when it worked, and to hear the woof, it's so, and I think that that's just really what I would say. Cardboard is your best friend. It doesn't have to be all the big bells and whistles. It's beautiful. I mean, here I just talked about a planetarium and a forest and robotics, but that was a long time coming. It was not. So I will go back to the classroom when we did the elective. We started small, but the thing that we had in that classroom is we wanted real rigor, and that it wasn't going to be something that you just. And I think that that's the whole concept of engineering design. It's a will and it's a process, but it is not meant to happen one time. It's constantly looking at it and rebuilding it and redoing it. And I think if we think about our STEM programs, it's going to be the exact same way. We're going to start it, and it's going to have, there's going to be some good and some bad. But as you continually go through that process, you're going to build something very substantial. And really, when we look at the future of our students, this is where the real impact is going to be, in giving the kids real life experiences, opportunities of collaboration, and being able to build on their different kinds of strengths. Because in a group of students working together, in a group of adults working together, we all have our strengths and we all have our flaws, and we have to learn how to navigate that. So giving students these real world experiences is the success of any STEM program.
Well said. You didn't stop just with the students. You opened doors to families as well. So can you talk a little bit about how you pulled your families into STEM, whether it was STEM nights or community labs? Talk a little bit about how that was set up for you.
Yes, I think and it was just so much fun last year with our STEM family night, and engaging families with their kids at tables and building together. And most everyone knows the classic spaghetti tower to build, but we would have competitions between families of mom and dad or whatever, maybe it was grandma, grandpa, and students, or some of the teachers, and having some of those friendly competition. But, the kids, and this is really interesting research in case someone doesn't know this research, but building the tower, the spaghetti tower, is a very common thing to do in STEM, just to get started and show. But with research, the most successful people with that, it's used in corporations a lot. The people over the age of 30 do terrible with it. It's kindergartners who have the most success with building that, because the creativity has not been kind of redirected out of them into the way, like going back to procedural math, like doing it only this way. So I think that's really fun that kindergartners have more success than, someone who's corporate America. So, but We are very fortunate. Our Sourcewell, our co-op that we're able to lead into, they do have some different kinds of like B-bots and OzBots that we could use on loan. So we had stations, and of course the high school kids and the robotics team came out and showed how they built and then let the kids see it and play with it. But really, it was a lot of the parents that were very interested in that too. And it takes a lot of volunteerism. And so, you have to really call out and make a big shout out for our teachers who showed up and ran those tables and so forth. But I think we had 32 different tables, and just going around and being able to experience. Some of them were building, some of them were just math challenges. Some of them were experiments like a lab. And so really to see, and I'm going to be honest with that night, what meant the most to me is how many parents came up and thanked me because they had such a great time. And so I just think that that's really where the beauty comes in when we're able to do those kinds of things. I think as much as we could possibly get families involved, that's really where our win's going to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Shelly, you talked a little bit about equity, and I'm sure that something like a family STEM night might be an area where equity by design is really important, whether it's with transportation or shift work or childcare, language access, food.
Yes.
What of those variables, or are there others that really helped you move attendance and ensure that families were able to participate?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think to bring that up because we did get MDE. I got a computer grant. And so some of that funding I was able to use for our STEM family night. But we offered pizza. And so we partnered with our local Little Caesars, and they supplied pizza. And, we were able to go to Walmart to buy beverages and a big salad for our families. And so, yes, we had dinner as the families walked in. One of the things I was really excited about too is we had some donations from partnerships that the kids were all able to take home a STEM bag. And so that were activities to do at home with their families. And so I loved that because it wasn't just that night and it wasn't just the experiences of all the different tables, but then they got something to take home to work on in the next. If you did it every night, it would have taken a month. There were some really great activities in there. So yeah. And I do think that you have to think about that because in the busyness of today's world and lack of time and resources and all of those kinds of things, it is important if you can provide food that will help get people through the door to offer them just a really amazing experience. And if you can, the takeaway of having something to continue that work when they're on their own. Because we know families are the building blocks of all education, and that's what's going to help us be successful. And sometimes we might need to plant the seed of helping them become successful within their own homes too, because they may not know what to do. School looks really different from when I was in school. Yeah. And so there are some big changes that have happened. And math is the one thing I always go back to. When my own son was in elementary math, I was like, what is this? This isn't how you do it. But that was years ago. And so you can only imagine as it continues to change. So as we look to give families resources and help too, even at home, I think we do a great job with literacy and books and bringing those kinds of things home, but the equity of being able to take a little lab home and work on that with your family. And so, yeah.
One of the things that STEM has the capacity to do is really to connect those curiosities that students have in school to credentials later on in high school and then really ultimately into jobs that they have. So can you talk a little bit about pathways that you have either set up or are wanting to set up in your STEM program that show a map from middle school projects to high school courses to credential or dual credit options, and then potentially even a local internship? What does that look like in Brainerd?
That's a great question. So I'll start with the elementary school. It's a K-4 media. And so it's a program that uses ISTE standards, and the students learn the different pieces of ISTE standards and also common sense digital citizenship. And so it starts there. And in their classes too, they have STEM rotation where they work on a number of different STEM activities. And so that's really trying to plant the seed and getting that foundational piece. When they move into middle school, our 5 through 8 is where this is very new for our district, but we have started a CTE program where those classes, we have had Project Lead the Way and STEM, but now we're building into, and I had said this a little bit earlier, but business, like financial literacy, business, entrepreneurship, medical kind of, and then education, what that might look like to in any kind of public service. So that might be a police officer, fireman, etc. And then Sarah's doing a class that's really based on environmental issues. And so right now she's doing tree identification, working side by side with the DNR. And I'm sure I forgot something, but we have all of that embedded. And so then when the students get to high school, we have a very intentional will of expectation that they can go through these pathways, and the pathways could be agriculture, it could be business, it could be culinary experiences. We have welding, engineering, and we also have facts. And so I'm sure I missed something, but in those programs, we do partnership with work-based learning with our community to get the kids hours. We do have dual enrollment with our community college and really working on setting the pathways. If the students want to go to college, we help set those up with something called school rings, and it keeps all of their data and helps keep everything organized for them. And then if they're on a trade trajectory, and we help set those up, and very intentional with letting the kids have opportunities to speak with those people. So we have 2 or 3, depending on what's going on. Last year we had 2 career fair days where multiple people come in to talk to the kids to let them know what is available for them.
That's fantastic.
So that feels really, really exciting. And of course, partnerships. Fortunately for us, CLC, the community college, is basically right next door. And so there's a lot of great collaboration with that as well.
That's great. And
Sure.
I'm going to make an assumption, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but that industry voice was really important in standing up those different pathways, because the local sectors
Absolutely.
that you're working with need to be
Yes.
part of that conversation. Can you talk a little bit
Absolutely.
about what that looked like, getting those partners set up?
Well, I think, the first one that pops into my mind, because we are a touristy area, just based on a lot of people come in the summer to vacation, and then we kind of roll up the sidewalk, so to speak, in the winter. But culinary is a really big one because we have the resorts out, and so they need chefs to work. And so Andrea really works one-on-one with our different resorts out there to kind of set the kids up for those types of careers and to have job opportunities in the summer with those. Welding's another really big one. And so there's partnerships within the welding community. Agriculture, farming, that's Magnus's wheelhouse, and there's a lot of connection there and getting the kids. But yes, Sourcewell, our government co-op, helps set up some of those opportunities as well. But there has been a wonderful amount of, through our Minnesota STEM ecosystem, really working with our Minnesota Department of Education and DEED, and trying to get really funding set up to help support the kids to really make stronger pathways with that. And I would say too, though, as strong as these pathways are and as amazing as the work is, the current statistic says that only 12% of students will go into these programs if they don't have a really strong program to start by if they're not in a strong STEM program by 5th grade, we'll only have 12% here. So I think as people are considering these pathways and they're considering their STEM programs, to really consider putting some effort over here too, because 12% is not the percentage I would hope to have. Right. Because I think about the future and where all those jobs are going, and they are STEM oriented. So I want to make sure that we really give a good, valiant effort for all the kids. So that tells me we need to start over in elementary school years a little stronger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Shelly, big wins live or die on systems, and I love that you're a systems thinker. So I want to talk a little bit about scale and staying power. If you could only move one system lever this year, whether it was assessment or scheduling or shared planning time or regional kit sharing, those are just some. What in your experience really yields the largest gain for rural students, and why is that? Why would you pick that one?
I think I'm going to have to lean into collaborative time for teachers, like real intentional time to collaborate and work together. Because I believe that the experts in the room are the teachers in the room, so to speak. And when we get a group of teachers together to have really focused, intentional, and not being told, I want you to do this, this, this. What is it that you see? You're in here every day. And to give them that time, that's what I really feel. And that's what I hear a lot in the work I do. Teachers are exhausted. They're being pulled in every single direction. There's a lot of concern with funding. And I'll go back to STEM doesn't always necessarily have to have a ton of funding. There's some really creative aspects. So if I could just give them the time that they need to feel successful and not rushed, I think that would be my first ask.
That's great. You mentioned the room. Tell me who's not in the room yet. How do you identify where gaps are in your programs, whether it's girls or multilingual learners or students with IEPs? What kinds of things do you do to ensure that you are noting the gap? And then what would you do if there needed to be a design change so that gap is filled?
Boy, that's the most amazing question, because really we do still have gaps and equity issues when it comes to STEM. Working with, our sovereign nations are a big gap that we have. We are still struggling with high school graduation. And so if that's just still an issue, then of course STEM is still going to be an issue, because sometimes the misconception of STEM is, oh, that's hard. I don't want to do that. I can't do that. Or really, it's not. It's to me, the gateway that opens up the future of what you never expected could happen. And so I like to tell my story because I'm that person that, was like, I never thought I could do all of this when I was back in their world. And so I think that, really looking at that is really important. And, I do think that there is a better distribution of men to women, but I have heard recently, I read a report about a month ago that's saying that our girls' numbers are starting to drop. And that's really heartbreaking for someone like me, that I feel like I've always worked very, I've been at this for 30 years now. And that 30 year, like, go, go, go. So, yeah. And I think too, offering programs that have that high interest that will attract them into it, because, you can read on social media and see the fatigue and burnout of STEM teachers that, they just want to tear things up and not. So I think to go back to that in the earlier years, there has to be some really intentional training. And like we've all heard teachers say this too, is that you just want to put it together once and be done. And it's like, no, really good design and engineering and so forth takes some time and some practice and willing to redo. And, I think about just in this career, how many times I've redone lesson plans or redone systems or found gaps. And so, but I do think, and I want to say something brave, is I think sometimes there's people in the conversation who are in the conversation maybe for their own personal gain and not our students' gain. And I think that that you have to be very aware that the integrity of the program is really focused on the students, because bottom line, that's what we're here for. Yeah. And those pathways are truly creating a pathway from A to B for our kiddos, and that they don't stumble and get lost within wherever they're supposed to be, and that they have good guidance to get there.
That's very well said. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
One of the things that at least teachers that I used to work with that did STEM classes or were being innovative and stepping outside the box as far as their curriculum, micro grants were a thing that helped sustain a lot of what they were doing. So in that light, if you had $5,000 tomorrow where would you put it to unlock the most additional student access? And what would the plan be when that money ran out for you?
Yeah. You make me think about the story I told you earlier about our culminating project between Sourcewell, our district, and the STEM. That was less money than that to be able to pull that off. So I think the more micro programming we can do that bridges together a whole lot of different science, technology, engineering, and math would be the biggest win. The one thing I didn't tell you about the program where we did it, it was our alternative school, our students who were not in a normal high school setting, because I felt based on equity, they were the ones that were always overlooked with programs like that. So I would love to build into maybe our special ed programs. And as a matter of fact, Friday, I get to go do a STEM project with our special ed high school class. So it's on coding. So I'm very excited about that. But really, if I had $5,000, I would build something that would help the students engage in all four and being able to connect it together. So, I have ideas this one was fishing, but I would love to do one at our airport and bring aviation and aerodynamics into that. I would love to do one at our raceway and talk about all the science and technology that goes with race car. I'd also really like to do one with our farming community and maybe soil sampling and or water sampling and work together with the DNR on that. So as far as ideas, it's never hard. And it really, all of what I just spoke about is very minimal funding. But I think it's really important to give access to kids who don't always get a seat at the table when it comes to those kind of opportunities.
I appreciate that very much. So is there anything that I haven't asked you about your STEM programming or what your district is doing that you want to share with our listeners?
Goodness. Well, of course, the program, the district, it is an incredibly collaborative effort. It's not like just me, it's everybody else. And I'm very fortunate to work with amazing people that help support and drive that work forward. I'm very fortunate to get to work with amazing teachers. And so I would just like to do a shout out to all the teachers out there, because as we know, over the last couple of years, it's progressively gotten tougher out there. And I just really appreciate the heart and soul that goes into every day. And I couldn't say anything without acknowledging the backbone of what education is. And I just think that I would just start small and intentional. And it doesn't have to be, I think the misconception is all of the money that it has to take. It really doesn't. The Dollar Tree is your friend. And paper. I do a whole lot of things with paper just to kind of mesmerize the kids and show how much weight you can make a bridge with paper and how many books can we put on there. So start small. And, I think that's really what I would suggest.
I love that. Well, one question, Shelly, that I ask all my guests, and you probably already know what it is.
I do.
What does the term rural advantage mean to you?
It does. So the rural advantage, number one, heart and community. I really think about the unique opportunities here in my backyard that might look a little different than, say, someone else who's listening to this. But our rural communities really innovate and foster innovation. And so you ask a farm kid to do something and they're going to amaze you as how they're going to put that together, because they don't even need tools. They could just figure out how to do it. So there's a lot of innovation, creativity, and problem solving. And so I think the thing is, for me, is the heart of the community that comes together. We really want to foster, and what rural advantage means to me is that hands-on experience when it comes to STEM, and just really cultivating that sense of curiosity, awe, and wonder. I just love when kids have that opportunity. And really, we want to inspire that next generation. But lastly, to me, the rural advantage is setting our kids with such success that they want to come back to our communities and open businesses and or run the businesses that are here, that we don't want to lose them to the cities or wherever else that might be. So rural advantage to me is offering these wonderful opportunities that we have the chance to share, but that with the hope that they come back and build and flourish in our own communities that gave back to them so much.
Oh, I love that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Shelly, I want to thank you for making STEM feel tangible. I mean, something you can build and test and talk about around the kitchen table. You know, what you've put in motion in Brainerd is really, it's a quiet kind of courage that I recognize in a lot of rural places. You start from where you are, you use what you have.
Or the piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly. A piece of paper. Who knew?
Yep. Who knew? They can email me and I will give them at least 30 ideas of what you could do with a piece of paper.
And how can they do that? How can they get in contact with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, and it's Shelly Munoz 316 on LinkedIn, and that would be the best way and easiest way to reach out to me.
All right. Well, there you have it, friends.
Thank you so much.
And friends, as you head into your week, consider where a place-based prompt could live in your own community, whether it's a lake or a clinic or a shop floor, and who isn't in the room yet that will make that shift in timing or transportation or student leadership that would be welcome. Take another look at your pathways with a parent's eyes. Can a curious sixth grader see a line from today's project to a course or a credential or a real local opportunity? I think that's the rural advantage in action. Learning that grows out of the ground we stand on and loops back to strengthen it. So if today sparks something, I'd love to hear what you're hearing and seeing and trying. And if this conversation was helpful, please like, subscribe, and follow The Rural Scoop wherever you listen, and share it with a neighbor who cares about rural kids and communities. I'm Melissa Sadorf. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.
Thanks so much for tuning in to The Rural Scoop. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep these important rural conversations going. And we'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment or share your thoughts. You can follow along and never miss a new release by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform or by following us on social. We're on YouTube at The Rural Scoop, Instagram at msadorf1, and X at msadorf03. The Rural Scoop is produced with support from Vela Educational Consultants. To learn more, visit velaconsultants.com. See you next time for more great discussions about rural education. And as always, keep leaning in to the rural advantage.